Hi everyone, it's awesome to be here. The most significant aspect of this conference is not that 300 people managed to convince their bosses to sign off on an expense in this environment, but that it marks what I think is a real shift in New Zealand. Now, we haven't been doing product since the 80s like Rich. And I started in 2009. I didn't really know what product managers did. I didn't know any product managers back then. My title was product development manager, whatever that means. And so for a community that's supposed to be great at solving problems, it's taking us an awful long time to solve this product management problem and really get our heads around how do we do it better? How do we bring people along the ride? And what's pivotal about this moment in time is that things have shifted. In 2015, I think when we started the Slack channel, it was me and Anthony and DJ talking to each other. And a few hundred people initially listening in going, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's kind of interesting. Now I can't get a word in edgewise. Like we have, I don't know, thousands of people on that Slack channel, amazing questions, and tens of people answering. So to me, that's the sign of it. And the fact that you're all here learning and sharing, and that I had to turn people down to be speakers for this event. We have 6 local speakers. Is an amazing achievement that we should all be proud of. So well done you. Okay, so I'm talking about my pet topic that I like to talk about, and it's strategy and how it relates to product. I'm going to have 4 things that you're going to take away today. The first thing is about just understanding strategy. My initial reaction when only 6 hands went up when you were asked who was working on strategy was shock, but then that's quite good because my talk is going to make you understand what strategy is, and you may actually find you're doing it and you didn't even know you were doing it. So I'm going to help you understand what strategy is and how to tell a good story around it. I'm also going to take the pressure off you, because I suspect a number of people who didn't put up their hands are going, well, I feel like I should be doing strategy, but I'm not sure if I am doing strategy. I feel a bit guilty about it. So I'm going to ease your mind. So you'll feel better after this talk. And I'm also going to help you, even if you're not creating the strategy, I'm going to help you express your impact towards it. And I'm going to give you an extremely simple way of doing that everybody could start doing next week. And I'm going to help you, for those people who are working with a group and collaborating on building a strategy. So maybe you're engaging with senior leadership to help flesh out the company strategy, or maybe you're a head of product working on a product strategy or a line of product strategy. I'm going to help you with a little new piece of content that I haven't shared with anybody, so you're getting a glimpse into my brain. So I'm experimenting, doing a little bit of discovery work myself on something that I've been working on that will help you set the groundwork for having good conversations around strategy. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit existential. Why do we exist? So I've been working on this why do product people exist framing for a number of years, and I keep tweaking it here and there, but this is where I've landed. I think that the reason we exist is to maximize the ROI from the efforts and outputs of the product team or teams that we work with towards achieving the strategic goals of the business we work in. And I've used very deliberate language here about it's the business strategy that we're optimizing for. It's not customers. Hopefully they're aligned, and if you make customers happy, the business will be happy. But your ultimate success metric is making the company successful and creating value for the company. And I've specifically said we work in, the business we work in. It's not the business and we're over here in product, which is my pet peeve when people start talking about the business. That's not it. You're in the business, right? And we're all in this together. So to me, this is really important. And so if we can agree on this, then if you don't know what your company's strategy is that you're working in, there's a problem, right? What are you maximizing the return for? So I did a poll on Slack recently to ask people these 4 questions and to respond. So do you have both a company and a product strategy? You have a company and you don't need or have a product strategy, you have both. You just have a product strategy, which I added later because somebody said, hey, what if you only have a product strategy? And I was like, I don't even know how that works, but I'm going to add it. And then you don't have, there's no strategy, this company's just floating around space and you don't have no idea where you're going or why. And so the results came in and they're fascinating. And so 33% of the people that responded reported there's no company strategy. It's a terrible situation for me. I don't know what to do. It's awful. I kind of want to confirm it here, but it might make my story less powerful if only 2 people put up their hands. But is there anybody here who would say that they actually don't think there's a company strategy where they work? Be honest, no one's going to look around to see if your hand's up. Okay, so 33% of you are lying, or you're just shy about putting your hand up. But I'm going to go with this number and say it's super important to understand the company strategy. And I guarantee if I pulled one of you out of the audience and said, tell me your company's strategy, you'd put your hand up and say, no, there isn't one. No, I can't describe it. But I think it's super important. So here's my definition of what strategy is to help you. If you're one of those people who didn't put your hand up and should have, I want to help you to understand strategy when you see it and what it is. And I've done this. I really enjoyed Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Brimelt, and he has a framing for strategy that I thought was useful. And I think that Roger Martin has some good stuff as well, but lots of those strategy books make it sound it's only about company strategies, like which market am I going to win in? You know, these sort of, and company strategy fits it. But I've changed the model a little bit so it fits with both company and product strategy. So hear me out. First thing is that your strategy is not a whole lot of cool things, which is typically the answer I get when I ask somebody, what's your strategy? Oh, we're doing A, B, and C. That is not your strategy. It's a punchline of a good strategy. It's also not we want to be bigger, stronger, better, therefore we're doing A, B, and C. It's also not a strategy, because I still don't know whether A, B, and C are the best ways for you to achieve that goal. And so what your strategy is, definitely some goals. You just need to have some bound goals, and they need to have a time frame that you would like to achieve them in. You've got to understand the facts within which you're operating. So context is important, and relevant context is important. So you need to understand the challenges, the realities that exist in the market you're playing in, with the product that you have, with the customers that you have, with the reality of the debt you have. All those facts need to come in, and they need to be coming in a way that's relevant to those goals you want to achieve. And then you're going to place some bets. And so these are the things that aren't true, but take into account the context within which you're operating, and with the cards you're going to put on the table to try and achieve these goals. And falling out from these hypotheses are going to be some very concrete actions that are either going to be done or not done that you can evaluate your progress towards achieving your strategy. And you're still not done because this can be wrapped up in a strategic roadmap. It can be a great articulation of what the actions you're doing, why you're doing them, some of the progress along towards achieving those goals. And you're still not done. So you still have, this is the mechanics of your strategy. If you can't explain your strategy to somebody, you may as well not have bothered, right? So your actual strategy is your ability to tell the story of your strategy in a compelling way that's easy to understand, easy to tell, and critically important, easy to retell, so that anybody in the organization go, yep, it's this. This is what we're working towards. This is why we're doing it and why it's going to be good. And this is the bet we're placing. We're not sure if it'll work, but we've got good evidence to support it working. So if this is what your strategy looks like, and somebody asks you, hey, what's your strategy? Then it's tempting to jump to the actions. And most people will jump to the actions of their strategy and assume you know the rest and know why they're brilliant ideas. But if you want to go a bit further and practice yourself to challenge your own understanding of what your strategies are, then I think there's a useful format to use that touches on a number of those things. So if you can say, we believe, because it's not true, because it's a strategy, right? Strategies aren't true until you execute them and something happens, right? If we do something, so if there's things that we do, so these are the strategic actions, so think of some of those strategic actions that you can know. If we do some stuff, and this can be quite concrete things that people understand, then something's going to happen, right? And we're going to do it for a group of people. So if we do this thing for this market and this and narrow that down, don't do what we did at Xero and say we're just going to do Xero in the US. That's not refined enough. It has the elements, but not the granularity. It's going to create some return, right? There's going to be some benefit for that group or the people that we are, and that for could be you as well, right? It doesn't have to be customers. The people benefiting from this action could be an internal measure, and that's okay, but someone benefits from you doing something, and it's going to result in a change. Something's going to change, you're going to save money, get more customers, whatever it might be. And the kicker is that if that change happens, and this is where product people sometimes get it wrong, because they go, yeah, the customers will be happy, full stop. Well, customers will be happy, yes, okay, that's great, but how does that impact the business? And so that's now going to impact our business by junk. And if I had more time, I'd go through a concrete example, but I got rid of the slide because I knew we would be short of time. But try that yourselves. Try and pick one of your strategies and try and articulate it in that way, and then make that the basis of the story you're going to start telling to whoever asks you or your team, or to try and help them understand the rationale behind why you're doing things. Okay, so what about product strategy? I've kind of just said strategy without saying product strategy, and I've done that very deliberately. 57% of people reported that they had a product strategy, and most of them had a product strategy alongside a company strategy. I'd like to call bullshit, because I've worked with 60 companies and lots of product people. I don't know many that have both, but barely can articulate one. So I was surprised by that, but maybe you're going to prove me wrong. Show of hands, who has both a company strategy and a separate product strategy? Ah, cool, okay. So I'm guessing that only 10% of people ever put their hands up. So that was 33% of hands before. And of the people that would put their hands up, there was about 50%. So it feels like it's about right. And I think the reason why there's this confusion, and why I think some people are either thinking they're not doing it or thinking they are doing it, is because you don't have a common understanding of when it is a strategic choice and when it's not a strategic choice. If you are doing it, then using this idea of context and goals and hypotheses and actions, it's likely that the company actions are going to be the things that spawn your product strategy, right? So this is the connection point. So an action becomes a strategy. And I try not to use Xero examples. I can't get rid of it out of my brain. In Xero, the example is there was a company strategic action to deliver payroll in, Bailey will correct me if I'm wrong, payroll in Australia. And the context was, MYB were doing it, we can't win there if we don't have payroll. They had a similar one in the US later on. So that was kind of like a company level rational decision that had a strategic backing and had all my elements to it, but it needed more work. It needed a product strategy to understand how we're going to deliver that into the market, which part of the market we're going to deliver it to, what type of business was going to be on this sort of, what we ended up doing, a simplified payroll. So that was a good example where we did have more strategic thinking to do coming off a company-wide strategy. But we were a big company by then in New Zealand standards. And there's many companies that will go straight from what is known as a company strategy. They'll look at an action of that company strategy and go straight into product land and not do strategy and feel terrible about it. But I think that's okay in some cases. In smaller companies, where the company strategy and the size of the business is such that it's talking product, especially if your company just builds product and there's only 20 of you there, right? It's likely it's one strategy that covers everything. And you don't need to do another product strategy even if you're the only product manager in the team. So I think get that off your shoulder. You don't have to do product strategy. You can do good company strategy, and then you can do other stuff that we don't call strategy, but has exactly the same 4 elements in it. So if you think about it, entering a new market is definitely company strategy. A product owner out of university is not going to decide, I think we should go into the Israeli market. Like, that's just not happening. So it's a company level strategic choice that makes sense. Everyone would agree that's strategic in nature, but moving a button to increase conversion, it has a goal, has some actions, has some reason, context about why moving that button might be an important thing. The bet that you're placing that if we change the color of it and move it a little bit, we think it's going to attract more attention, therefore it's going to get more clicks, and therefore they're going to get further, and then they're going to convert. It's got all the hallmarks of how you make decisions in strategy, but we don't call it strategy. And that's an obvious not strategy, right? Okay, what about improving a workflow? I don't know if it's just the jobs to be done thing. It's kind of like product discovery stuff. It's like just efficiency. It doesn't feel, no exec's going to think of that as a strategic decision. What about proposing a new feature? Wow, it depends what the feature is. Like if it takes us 2 years to build this massive enterprise feature. Maybe it's a strategic decision, maybe it's not, maybe it's a company decision, a new customer segment, a new product line. And it's not clear to me or anyone else on the planet where product stops in terms of strategic thinking, where the company stops. And that's because it's different in every organization. Sometimes you don't need to go further. The problem though is if you have a company strategy that doesn't go far enough and a product strategy that doesn't go far enough and doesn't join them, you end up with these two strategies that don't connect to each other. That's a problem. So if you can't map from your strategy or good choices you're making in product through into the language of the business's articulation of what's valuable to the business, which is the strategy, that's the problem. Not that you're not doing product strategy. So don't worry about doing product strategy. Okay, so here's this one easy thing you can do, whether you've got a product strategy or not. The key thing you need to do is be aware of this awkward reality, that nothing you do matters. No, that's actually not what I said. Nothing you do, nothing you release, and I say nothing with a small almost, because almost everyone I talk to says, oh, no, we did this thing, and it totally impacted revenue. I talked to Nicole last night about it. But most of the time, especially if you're doing rapid releases of new pieces of work, nothing you do is going to move the needle, the goal, the strategic goal of the company. Because all of those strategic goals of the company are lagging indicators of success. Their revenue, customer numbers, retention, penetration into a new market, ARR. No one thing changes those things. I remember my naive early days of Xero building a product and delivering it this amazing feature that everyone had been asking for, not a blip. Nobody cared. In fact, it was months before customers even knew it existed. Right? So nothing you do, almost, makes an impact directly on strategic success, which is the number one reason why you're all treated like delivery managers. Right? Because what you're doing is irrelevant. Someone else thought of the idea, you're just doing it, and eventually there'll be a cumulative effect that won't be attributed to you, but to the smart people who created the company strategy. And so therefore, you're not living the value of a product leader or product manager, and nobody thinks of you like that way. So what you need to do is you have to understand company strategy. It is absolutely not okay to say there's no, 33% of you, not okay to say there's no company strategy. It's your job to find it out, because there is no founder or CEO alive today, if you went up to them and said, what's the strategy? And they go, well, I don't have one. They don't exist, right? So there's no company with no strategy. And in fact, strategy is just the culmination of the impact of the things you've decided to do. Every company has decided to do some things and has hopes and dreams for something to happen as a result. It's strategy, right? So it's your job, it's incumbent on you, you're getting paid to know and help the company articulate that strategy. So you're going to use all those slides before about what it is to map onto what you've derive as it, and then you're going to replay it back to your boss or to the CEO and say, hey, I just want to make sure I've understood the strategy right, because I'm going to be anchoring my work off it. Here's what I think it looks like. And do a bit of a, we believe, blah, 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 and see if it resonates with them. That's a much better argument to have than, I think we should be doing this. No, I think you should be doing that. You need to get on the same page. And what that means is that you're going to understand that company strategy, and there might be a product strategy sitting in there as well, but don't only attribute your actions to a product strategy. It's got to be in the language of, ultimately be in the language of the business. So you're going to deliver some stuff. There's going to be some outcomes, because we're all outcome driven, right? But those outcomes, remember, are going to have nothing to do with what the company are measuring as successful. So you're still irrelevant. And they're going to be leading indicators of success. And your job is to map those leading indicators of success to those lagging indicators of success that are measured in terms of, like revenue typically and customer numbers and those sorts of things that all strategies look at. So that's your job. If there's one slide you think about, what does a product manager do? They do this. And they make sure that attribution has impact, and they make sure the things that they're delivering create the outcomes that are leading indicator, that will create leading indicators that over time will result in some value up here at the strategy. And every time you do a demo, you're telling that story of attribution. The number of demos I've been to where it's like, yeah, we did this, and the function, it goes like this, and you do this, you click on that. And I'm going, well, but why? Start with the context, why this is important, not for customers only, but why is it ultimately important for the company, your company representatives here. And one of the easiest ways you can tell that story, and I've seen hundreds of roadmaps, I'm sure Bruce has seen them as well, is the way in which you represent your roadmap. Now, I'm not here to tell you that roadmaps shouldn't have things on them, things you're doing. Like some roadmaps are going to be at a granularity where, yeah, there's some delivery happening and you need to know when it's been delivered. Some might be longer term, now, next, later sort of style. But whatever roadmap you are creating, avoid this. Avoid streaming it by team. We used to call the teams after Snoopy characters. We had Snoopy team, I know Charlie, there's some stuff going on. So we had these teams that we would say at Xero that you know, team A is working on these things, team B is working on these things. Ridiculous idea because it's not telling me anything about where our investment is going according to achieving our strategic goals. Avoid streaming by technology. Don't have a web team and a mobile team and have lanes for them. Don't necessarily, there's some caveats here. Doing it by product is also a problem because a product can create value in lots of ways. What aspect of the product are you creating value for? And don't line it up by, this is the sign-up workflow feature set. This is the feature X thing. Don't create roadmaps that look like, well, I should never say don't, but avoid. And instead consider aligning it to strategic goals. So maybe there's some a theme around the strategy that you've derived from the company, which is about generating new revenue streams. And you're working on this little feature over here, which will enable something else, which will enable something else, which will help you derive some new revenue in a year or two's time once you've built some of these foundational things. But line it up with something that is in the language of the business so that you're reminding the people who are looking at it why you exist and what's important. You might do it with themes. So sometimes the goals might be too granular. It might be a number of revenue goals that the strategy is talking to, but there might be, you know, a common goal of some of the B2B companies in New Zealand is that they're going into the enterprise. So they have some aspirations to get bigger customers to create better revenue opportunities. So maybe there's a few strategies that you've got to hit up the enterprise. So make it a stream of stuff you're doing to win in the enterprise. And that's okay to say win in the enterprise there because everyone knows what the strategy is and there's a whole lot of things you're doing. And it's the primary reason why you're spending time here. And what that does is not only do this attribution of why you should bother, but it also helps as I say, a CPO or a head or a CEO even, to look at the investment they are making or the company are making in these various strategic themes. So if there are three broad strategic themes and your roadmap is empty on the third one, that might be a good red flag to say, well, I thought we decided we're doing this. And you could say, well, I've made a product strategy decision potentially to not work on that in this quarter because the other two streams need some effort and I'm going to get back to it later. So it's a good conversation start about investment distribution as well, according to your strategy. I also think it's useful to not just be strategic, but don't hide away from the fact that 20% of your time is not on strategy. It's on keeping this damn thing afloat. And I think you should make that visible. Or whatever the number is. 60? Yeah. Whatever it is in your company, in New Zealand it's 20, maybe in America it's 60, I don't know. Oh, singer. Okay, so my final thing that I want to talk about is collaborating. And this, I'm keen on feedback, so come and hit me up after this if any of this resonates or you go, that's just wrong. I wasn't sure what to call this section because there's two problems this is heading up. The first problem is how to collaborate on strategy. And I've been in lots of strategy sessions where it's all over the place. And there's ideas and they're throwing things up here, massive whiteboards. I had this great slide when we did it for Product Aotearoa of our Miro board when we were talking strategy, and it was awesome. But confusing and convoluted and was hard for us to focus in and really understand what was important. So that's one problem this concept I'm going to share is going to solve. The other one is when I hear people complaining, and they're often maybe engineers or even product owners and product managers, people building the stuff, they go, I cannot believe you've just changed your mind. I was working on this thing and now, are we following strategy or we're not? I thought we were doing this. Why are we changing? Why is things changing? And And there was a particular company I was working with where this was a common complaint. And I was outside looking in, had a high-level view of what their strategy was. And I'm going, I don't know why you're so upset about this. Like this, the strategy's the same. Nothing, an action has changed, but the strategy's the same. And so it got me thinking about what strategy is not static. And we tend to think of strategy as this 12-month exercise where we go in a room, go off-site, get the whiteboard out, come up with a poster, put it on the wall, and then just start doing some other stuff, right? And what I've started to think about is if we think about strategy as a living organism, but it's only alive, it's more alive in some places than others. So I've come up with this idea of this strategy pendulum, which will become world famous. I'll be writing a book about this pretty soon, I'm sure. And so the strategy pendulum talks about the anchor of all, the fulcrum of your strategy is a vision, you know, where you want to go. And a strategy is kind of like, well, this is our plan of action and a reasoned plan of action for how we can get closer to this vision, right? A vision doesn't change, shouldn't change very often. If it does, it's called a pivot. That generally doesn't happen. You don't want to be flip-flopping around on what your vision is. So be clear about what that is and stop arguing about it, right? Anchor that. When you're going into a meeting and you're collaborating on a strategy and you're the owner of that strategy, so if you were the CEO owning a corporate strategy or a product person owning a product strategy, you should be setting those goals. And this is your way of focusing the team that you're working with on a restricted set of problems and opportunities to collaborate on. So don't go into a meeting and say, right, let's do product strategy. What should we optimize for? You're going to set those goals as the leader of that exercise. And you're also going to know more than anyone else in the room probably the context within which you're operating, which creates some guardrails for your strategy. So you're going to distill the context from the company strategy, if that's important, or if you're building a product strategy. You're going to discuss what you've learned in the market. You're going to share all of your knowledge to help the people that you're working with to be more able to contribute to this exercise of building a strategy that you're all going to buy into and feel good about. You're going to have some hypotheses in your brain, but you're going to hold those back. You've got some bets that you're going, I'm pretty sure I know what we need to do. I know where I'd place my money. But you're going to hold that back because this is about collaborating with other smart people who have ideas, who are going to hear this problem of, oh, okay, we want to achieve this. Here's some reality. I know, and they know the product context and other things. What would I bet? So you want to collaborate heavily on hypotheses and even more so on actions. Because the hypotheses may require a number of things to happen, and smart people in the room might reduce the number of actions you need to do to exercise that hypothesis. They might come with new innovative ideas. So this is this ability to create innovative thinking in a constrained way so that you're not just greenfielding it and saying, let's just do anything. And the same pendulum applies after you've done the first cut of a strategy and you're a few months in. What are the first things that are going to change? It was going to be the ideas that didn't actually execute on that hypothesis very well, and you learnt a little bit because you're doing continuous discovery and you've read the book and you've learned some more stuff. And so you go, well, the hypothesis I think is still right, but I think we didn't quite tackle it right with these actions. So when someone complains, oh, we keep changing our actions. Well, it's still the same bet, but we've found a better action. So it's good, right? We're not here to doggedly hold on to the actions that we said we were going to do 6 months ago. So allow, within reason, the actions to move a little bit more than the things higher up on this pendulum. Okay, book material? Yes. Awesome, good. Okay, so in summary, you're going to tell a good story, you're going to understand what strategy is, you're not going to be the victim to the absence of strategy, naughty, you cannot do that, you have to know it, and you have to anchor everything you do to that strategy. You don't have to create a product strategy if you don't need to, and New Zealand has lots of small companies, under 100 people is normal, and it's quite common in those companies not to separate out your company strategy and your product strategy. So stop listening to all the American companies telling you have to have one, because 100 people is like barely a startup over there. Right. Do the alignment and adapt with the now world famous strategy pendulum. Thank you very much.